Hello and welcome to Insights by 180 Degrees Consulting, Manipal University, Jaipur. This is a webinar where experts on various subjects provide their valuable insights related to their subjects and field in the time of ongoing pandemic COVID-19. Today we have Mrs. Devyani Kapoor, founder of Born Again. I would like Abhineet to introduce the guest to the viewers.
Devyani Kapoor carries with her over 28 years of experience in the education sector and has worked with key brands in the industry like D.A.V Schools, Amity Schools, Heritage School, Educomp Solutions, K.N.Modi Foundations, Cambridge University Press, and The Great Place to Study, and many others. As a teacher, she has always believed in becoming a good mentor and guide to her students so that they can learn the skills to adapt to any situations and be empowered to achieve their goals. Currently, she's a senior resource consultant and author at Cambridge University Press, founder at Edudevs School of Inspired Teaching and Learning, and a founder at Born Again, Devyani Kapoor's School of Personality. We welcome you, ma'am.
Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so our first question to you, ma'am, is how has global pandemic impacted you at an individual level?
Last 3 months, we all have been exposed to a part of our own selves. And that self is which we were also not aware of. So it has been a very new journey for each one of us. The lockdown has changed the entire face of universe around us, whether it be our lifestyle, admissions, work culture, everything. In fact, I would say that it has challenged our whole idea and perception of normalcy and generality. And if you talk about me, I miss going out and working, meeting my colleagues, meeting students. I miss going out with a friend for a cup of coffee, or probably, hugging while greeting. Something which was so normal is not normal. So we have to be now kind of get adapted to the new normal. These small changes have definitely occurred. So I would say somewhere the social cohesion is diminishing and the self is becoming very important. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I don't think that anyone could ever put that in a simpler way. The second question that we would like is, being from an education industry, how do you perceive the new model of online learning in terms of students and teachers?
Oh, yes. Let me talk first about students. So, yes, if you talk about introduction of technology, that is not new that has happened, because students last 10-15 years had already put their hands and exploring technology in classrooms. But the major change is in terms of the adaptability of the whole a transaction of knowledge. If we look at it, you can't just put the curriculum down the throat of student. There is a lot that happens, in a classroom situation, in a physical setup. The students do miss the lunch break time. So much happens during that lunch break. They miss the high five. They miss the sports. They could do anything to get one sports period extra. I'm sure you would have gone through this. You would bargain. So yes, that's something which will not remain normal. I don't know till when. Their interpersonal skills. So, those team building activities. So for example, yes, online, I keep hearing and seeing the ads of online MUN, online social service. But, a lot is learned when that used to happen in a physical environment. So yes, for students, their life has definitely changed. And they have been really putting up a brave front while sitting in front of screens, and also taking down a lot of, at the same time, doing learning. When I talk about teachers, teachers have actually grown in terms of what used to be luxury in terms of using an ICT complied classroom or use of technology. Now everything is a necessity. So probably tier A cities, progressive school teachers were very equipped with their hands-on technology and audiovisual complied classrooms, and probably teachers who were still using the chalk and talk, the book methodology. Yes, for them, now they cannot survive. You can't not have teaching happening for the whole of the year. But one thing I want to say, teachers' role have enhanced manifold, because it is now very important for them to be that facilitator who can handle the sensitivity in remote learning environment. So now there is completely a different code of conduct altogether, followed by teachers and students. So, issues of discipline have completely changed. So if you remember, when you were in school days, disciplinary issues would be bunking the class, or breaking the window pane, or probably, breaking the desk, or the, gang fights which you had. Now it's a very cyber discipline. So they have to, come up with a newer code of conduct where, discipline is one child sitting in one room, the other sitting in the other, a very different place, and still teacher talking about disciplinary issues. So these issues are very different. So their dealing would be definitely now different.
Ma'am, I would like to ask a follow-up question from the previous question. Is that since the teachers is gradually adapting to this online education, so what are the paradigm shift would you suggest for the teachers to adapt so that students could actually adapt all this education what they're trying to teach?
Yes. So, see, my main suggestion would be that first they have to understand the difference between a physical classroom and a remote learning. It is very important that the teachers need to develop, number one, a connect with the students first, and then go on to teaching. The other thing is that teaching has to be more in terms of using the technology which is there at your hands. So involve a lot of research, involve a lot of discussion, and this I'm talking primarily at school levels, higher schools as well. And also avoid the annotation, the normal, regular reading. Refrain from that. So you have to do a lot of inclusive education, follow a lot of inclusive methodologies. Teachers have to, talk about collaborative projects. They have to initiate that, come up with creative thinking, develop critical analytical skills amongst their students, indulge in a lot of debates, discussion, deliberation, and research. That's something very important at this time, where you know that online skills is a methodology which is, it's a system which is very different from your physical teaching learning. So it has to be collaborative. Students have to be made stakeholders in the learning process.
Right, ma'am. It was actually well said, since students has to be, collaborative with teachers, and especially the debate thing.
So, ma'am, we understand that you have this organization, Born Again. Could you please tell us something about it?
let me first tell you how Born Again was born. So, having spent about nearly 3 decades in education, and most of my times around the students from age group 14 to say 20 years of age, gave me a lot of insight as to most of the time the students were doing things, reacting to situations, and honestly, they were not aware of the situation they were not mindful of the situation they were in, and hence they did those mistakes or probably took those steps which not to be taken, and they were completely oblivious of their environment, and so they were not able to hone their real inner potential. And this is how Born Again came into conceptualization. And yeah, Born Again is the school of personality, and it's based on three pillars which hinges on this philosophy of positive psychology, mindfulness, and cognitive behavioral therapy. So positive psychology has been very dear to me right from um, many years. When I read this poem that children who are brought up with a lot of praise, appreciation, they come up with a lot of, personality, which is leadership qualities, those, and children who are brought up with criticism, and they come up with a lot of guilt. So a tip to all the parents, and not just to teachers and parents, to use ample amount of positive psychology to rear their children. Similarly, when you talk about mindfulness, which I already spoke about, mindfulness is your ability to be aware of the situation you're in. That's very important. The moment you're aware that this is my situation, half of the task is done there. Your half battle is won. Then you talk about cognitive behavioral therapy, which is nothing but a habit formation. So like, sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. And similarly, sow a habit, reap a character. So it finally leads to character building. And yes, the organization is truly, truly a youth-driven organization. And here, youth get a lot of opportunity to explore their real potentials. They are given, and they are empowered to take the decisions. They are empowered to challenge the decisions of the management. And we work on a very democratic lines. And in this entire opportunity, they become not employees, they become stakeholders in the organization. They start aligning their personal growth with the growth of the organization. And that's the beauty. So we don't employ, we make the youth, the stakeholders in the organization. So that, and we've grown very, very organically. We've not taken any funding from anywhere. It just has grown. The organization is growing big each day. We started with about 3 people, and now there are around 20 odd youth who are working for the organization and doing commendable work.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That was very insightful. So just to follow up, I would like to know that how this particular initiative of yours is actually benefit during the times of pandemic, when when people are losing out their job and now they see a hope of, new companies shifting, new MNCs coming up in India. So how it's going to help the youth of today?
See, the first thing is how it is going to help the youth of today is in terms of now that you said that the job market is, squeezing, and I always say that it is the skill. So there is a lot of, number one, skill development, which through this organization, which happens. The other is the organization works on a psychological level, working in terms of psychology, promoting the mental health of the the youth around. But at the same time, when you talk about this, organization gives a lot of opportunity in terms of internships, in terms of hiring, at where they can align, as I said, their own dreams with the dreams of the organization. And yes, we are working to recruit the youth, to employ them, to give them a future by providing empowerment and job employability as well.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So now Sai will be asking you a question.
Ma'am, as you said, Born Again, which stands on the pillars of positive psychology, mindfulness, and habit formation. It is very unique and much needed for a country like India, where youth form more than 50% of the population. As you already mentioned, it's a youth-driven organization. So what message would you like to give for the youth of this country to stay positive and energized and not leave hope during these trying times?
Yes. Very good question, Santosh. Excellent question. Yes. See, today's situation is such that we all are undergoing a kind of metamorphosis of our personalities. And here I would specially address the youth of the nation today, that the process may be painful, but eventually it would lead to a better our own selves, a better version of ours, because life has a capability of transforming itself and bouncing back. Also, I would want to give this message that whether we are growing our strengths, or we are reducing our liabilities, or probably we are expanding our capabilities, personal development has to be an ongoing process. Also, I would, being a teacher, once a teacher, always a teacher, I would say that the principles, the governing principles of primary greatness can never be challenged. So things like hard work, resilience, self-efficacy is the recipe to bourgeoising and also successful social identity. A very important point here I would want to mention is the resilience that I mentioned. So resilience is something which is your ability to endure and survive the odd timings. And these are the odd hours. And people who will have resilience, who will be able to change with the changing times, adapt to the newer realities, will definitely be successful. It might take some time. You have to be patient, but use this time to hone your skills, because now it will be skill oriented. The market will be skill oriented. So that is something I would want to tell the youth of today.
That was very well said, ma'am. I'm sure this would ignite the minds of youth of this country to work with utmost hard work, resilience, and with a strong personality. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to ask now, as you said earlier that teachers, students do have to adapt to online classes, but probably in 2 months or probably 3, schools and colleges will reopen. So what, according to you, is the next normal in education industry? Or sector rather?
the next normal for education sector, first of all, we can only perceive when another month or two how the school culture, the whole school culture will change. The new normal will be, you can visualize the classroom strength, the setting would be reduced by half. The scenario would be they will have to cut down on certain things which we were taking, which was so much our part of life. Apart from skills, first let me come up on how the scenario will change. Remote learning technology will always remain hand in hand, because schools and education is one area where there is a lot of social collaboration, lot of cohesion that takes place. And it is this that might be a threat to the coming situations. So yes, very important will be for education system to work on a very different paradigm space in terms of honing the skills, four global skills. That is creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, and communication. So all these four skills, which are the 21st century skills, which normally were not into any curriculum as such, now education will have to take them in a very robust manner to another structure that I look is then the character building of students in a newer form. The coming, the post-lockdown new normal 21st century students should be well equipped with authenticity, connectivity, productivity, and responsibility. All those four C's and these four-pointer programs will have to be merged, because authenticity becomes very important. You have to develop your hard work, your core skills. Second is connectivity. You have to work in connect with so whether when you talk about connectivity, I would also want to say the school will have to work in connect with the parents, with the outside society. Now, if the traditional red wall boundary, which the schools used to be, will not apply, that boundary will have to liquidate, because things are changing. Productivity is very important. You have to be productive to remain in the market, and responsibility. Again, the core principle, these will take forefront, and because the new 21st century post-lockdown student or youth should be equipped with all 8 parameters. That is.
Thank you, ma'am. That was very well said. I would like to have a follow-up question on this. Ma'am, we mentioned about many tools and many areas which the students in schools need to focus, and among them one was connectivity. So I was like reading a few days back that a student had to commit a suicide because she wasn't able to complete her lectures and give the exams online because of the connectivity issues in our villages. So, what are your suggestions for the authorization, rather administration, to bridge the gap between villages and network and this connectivity barrier we are having in our nation as of now?
See, now again, the new normal will be that initially, if you look at the education scenario in villages and the tier 3, 4 cities, you see, the difficulty was the students did not even have the NCERT books. Now the situation is multiplied. So now it's not just about the books, it's also about that, you have to have that ICT compliant education. So government has to, and I think because I'm being part of this the policies and all. So yes, government is doing its last few days, well, few months, government has done a lot so that the connectivity or the ICT complied education system is developing. But you have to keep this in mind, that cannot happen overnight. It will take a long time, because at the moment, you can't, the scenario of our country is that the children were deprived and devoid of books, basic bags, stationery. Now it is the challenges of technology. So that will take, and I think the CSR has to take, the corporate social responsibility will now, I think, should focus on these areas. The NGOs should pick up this, and education, because education is pallbearer of intellectual revolution. And spending in education is the most critical at this point of time, because this is how you convert your human resource from liability to asset. And I believe a lot of potential lies in villages, which has to be. So yes, and another thing, Praneeth, this will also, bridge the gap between the gap which always used to remain between the cities and the villages. Times will come, the gap will narrow down, and that will be a wonderful times to come. But it will take time.
Thank you, ma'am. That was really wonderful.
I would like to ask you something, ma'am. So basically, a few days ago, we saw a news on TV, which was about a scam which broke out in Uttar Pradesh, wherein one teacher was registered from same name and same ID at 5 different places, and that teacher didn't even exist at in any of those schools. So seeing these situations, what do you think about how seriously education has been taken up in India, and whatever the investments which is made in the education sector, are they enough?
Good question, Abhineet. Yes, these 3 incidents actually make us stop and think over. This is a major scam that happened, and which is very reflective of what percentage is the government spending of GDP is being spent on, human resource development. So 2 areas, health and education. So why these incidents should not be seen against a person? The incident has to be seen against the policy. The incident has to be seen against the system. Similarly, few years back, you saw so many, these audits took place where the teachers were highlighted that they did not know, the spellings were wrong, they didn't know the names of the capital of this, the states. I would question not them. I want to question the people who recruited them. So these are deeper questions, and they have to be dealt at a level policy making. And yes, that is an indication that, number one, are we spending enough? And if we are, is it going to the right places? That is definitely a deeper question. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
So dear listeners, this was Mrs. Devyani Kapoor, founder of Born Again. We thank her for sharing her valuable insights and be here with us. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone. And it's an honor to be associated with such a young and dynamic group of youth whose ideas and whose questions were really razor-cut, to the point, and which dealt with, they were very diverse from personality to education. Very well. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really honored.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.